Good evening, campers, it's me, Kira. Today we are going to talk about really a seminal work of science fiction, a seminal work of contemporary science fiction that really did change the game for the landscape, and that is Cixin Liu's The Three-Body Problem. Cixin Liu's 2008 work was translated in 2014 by Ken Liu. In fact, Cixin Liu is called Da Liu, Big Liu, and Ken Liu has the nickname in China Zhao Liu, which means Little Liu, which I quite enjoy. This translation has been lauded, so much so that Cixin Liu actually has said that if you are a Chinese speaker who also speaks English, don't read his work, read the English translation. And I think that's worth mentioning, and it's also worth mentioning the context to why Cixin Liu feels as though the translation is apt. And that is because the first scenes that happen within the three-body problem in the original occur in the middle. It's the Cultural Revolution of China. Luckily for me, in my review of Ninth Building, I spoke about the Cultural Revolution, and I'm just going to stick what I said there right here. The Cultural Revolution, which lasted a decade, was to, in a nutshell, remove bourgeois, capitalistic and traditional elements from Chinese society. The Cultural Revolution, to how it could be argued, was to ensure that China was to give power back to the proletariat and to ensure that China was not to rescind back to its previous ways. However, any idea that Mao seemingly had ultimately resorted to violence and the descent into chaos. Let's have a look at Mao Zedong's track record. Prior to the Cultural Revolution, we had Mao's idea of the Great Leap Forward. 5-year plans that were meant to industrialise and modernise through the reconstitution of land and the reconstruction of the agrarian economy which fed the people. Mao decided to over-exaggerate what he was going to do, leading to non-existent surpluses of food being collected. This non-existent surplus was somehow meant to feed the existent people of China, which ultimately led to the Great Chinese Famine of 59 to 61, which is argued to be the second, if not the worst famine in all of human history. One of the monumental histories of China is the Cixi, which is the record of the Grand Historian. It states, Mian Yi Shi Wei Tan, food is the priority of the people. It is a basic rule, it is a fundamental rule, and ultimately it can be the rule to your downfall as leader. Mao knew this and therefore decided to pen within the Little Red Book the propagandist text that would fuel the Cultural Revolution. He wrote that people should bombard the headquarters and to rebel is justified. Mao didn't take personal responsibility. Instead decided to shift the blame to the bourgeois, the capitalists, and got people to rebel. He got people to turn on their own kin. Thank you, past me, for putting in all that work. Wait, a Chinese author writing in China, criticising the Chinese government? Some people are going to think, oh no, we have another Mo Yan on our hands. But it's worth knowing that the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping openly allow criticism of the Cultural Revolution. They themselves criticise it. And I think the same was true with Xi's predecessor, Deng Xiaoping. Therefore, Cixin Liu's criticism of the Cultural Revolution isn't as nail-biting as some people would like to make out on the internet. In fact, Cixin Liu is celebrated in China. He is one of their biggest exports. Cixin Liu, in order to be writing science fiction, is actually quite interested because when he first got into that genre, he was living under the Cultural Revolution, and to be reading those Western titles would have been punishable. Cixin Liu's passion has come from a dark history, and within the three-body problem, there is a dark history that is going to happen to humankind. Because under the background of the Cultural Revolution, we have contacted aliens, and they are going to come for our planet. Yi Wenji sees her father being beat up by those who are working under the Red Army, and this leads to a number of events where she ends up working with two scientists, Yang Weining and Li Zhisheng, to work on a secret satellite mission, sending messages up into space. In the vast expanse, you never really think that anything is going to come back, but Yi gets a message from a Trisolarian who is a pacifist. This Trisolarian advises not to respond, do not send any more messages back, do not continue what you are doing. But because this is the first book in a trilogy, you know they're going to. While this is going on, alongside many other plot points that are a little bit too fetid for my liking, we always seem to ricochet back to Wang Miao, a nanotechnology professor who becomes embroiled within the game Three Body. Before I carry on, this is hard science fiction, which means a lot of the information, a lot of the technology and the cutting edge science that Cixin Liu is talking about is almost info dumped at you within these short chapters, and I'm not entirely sure I understand what is going on. Or someone says, oh, you didn't read it closely enough. Well, you can explain to me how you take a proton, map it onto the second dimension, and how the problem of having that in the world's orbit because it would curve, and then in order to map it with nano pico technology to make a supercomputer that escalated through to the sixth dimension where it just ends up being the size of a ball. If you could explain how that works, that would be great. The three-body game, from what I could garner, where the player is introduced to a civilization where they meet based on our history prominent figures, be that scientific or philosophical, and they're trying to deduce the three-body problem. The three-body problem, in a nutshell, is that when you have celestial bodies, you can understand the orbit and trajectory of two bodies. So in regards to like the Earth and the Moon, we understand how that orbit works. However, if you bring a third body into play, TLDR, it gets really chaotic and you can't really work it out. So through these various levels, which always end in catastrophic destruction because of this third body ultimately burning the entire Earth to the ground, Wang discovers a solution. This is where I start to lose the thread of this book. The game is either a replica of Trisolaris and the aliens have manufactured this game in order to deduce what is currently happening over there, even though the Trisolarians have way more technology. Remember about the proton? Yeah. This book at times forced my hands into my head going, I don't know what is going on. Although this is a lauded and approved translation by the original author, this book is clunky, its narrative is all over the place, to the point where I kind of forgot there were aliens present because everyone's very similar. Are the Trisolarians vaguely human? Like, I don't think that was clarified in any way, shape or form. But then you have the floating eyes from the Trisolarians. I was lost. To the point where I'm unsure if the second book, The Dark Forest, which is to provide a solution to the Fermi paradox of is there life out there, I don't know if it will expound or expand on the gaps in my understanding of this, or if it's meant to be confusing. Was I captivated by this in the same sense of when I watch a number file video where the maths that is being discussed is really just going over my head, but I'm vaguely following along, but there's just so much cutting edge theories that Cixin Liu has implemented in this that I really just couldn't follow the thread of what was happening, why it was happening, whilst being really heavily fed, but this is what I'm doing. I was very much intrigued by the Cultural Revolution aspect. And I actually found out that one of the authors whose work I picked this up on a whim. It's Lao Shi's Mr. Martin's son. I found out that he committed suicide because he was worried about what was going to happen to him being an intellectual. The cultural and historical background to this, I can't deny, had me completely captivated. But the more the science really ratchets up, I couldn't follow it. And for the amount of people who were like, you need to read this is incredible, makes me think, like, are they fully understanding what is going on here? I think, and I'm saying this after the first book and I've not finished the trilogy, but I think this is overhyped. I think people have really put this on a pedestal, and I'm not entirely sure why. It very much reminded me of Asimov's work, which at sometimes could just reach this point of Asimov, like, good for you, you know what's going on, I don't entirely No. And in fact, one of Asimov's short stories, The Billiard Room, turns up into this as an explanation to what Cixin Liu is then going to further. I'm going to give the three-body problem a 3, because I think that's quite poetic, but this was just a workout. Let me know if I should read the second one, because it's actually good, or if you would just like me to ramble like an idiot, being like, I don't understand what's going on. Either will suit.